Although my clock on the computer says 7:29.
Mine too. Mine too.
No, fair enough.
You want me to bring him in?
Sure, why not? Dan, are we about set?
Yes, I'm trying to unmute Janelle, and she must be muted because it won't unmute. There we go.
There we go.
Aha.
How about Mr. Scher?
I'm working on him. There we go.
There
I
you
think
go.
I've got him now.
Looks like we got one person in the waiting room, but I'm sure we will take care of that.
We will.
So with that, we'll get going, okay, Jen?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Planning Board in the city of Birmingham for Wednesday, August 26th of 2020. Could we please call the roll?
Scott Klein,
Present.
Robin Boyle,
Here.
Stuart Jeffries,
Here.
Bert Kosek,
Here.
Daniel Scher,
Here.
Brian Williams,
Present.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce,
Here.
Jason Emron,
Here.
Nassim Ramin,
Here.
Rachel Hester, June Lee.
Here.
Okay.
Laura, if I may, Rachel Hester is about to join, so if we can
Great.
Excellent.
I'll mark her
make note of
present.
that.
Thank you.
And June, if you're here, if you want to, Jeremy, do we want to get his video going in case June has any input as well? Excellent. There you go. Welcome, June. All right, we are quorum, full house, which is fantastic. So let's move on to the review and approval of the minutes from our meeting on August 12th, 2020. Do I have any comments, corrections? Is that Mr. Scher? Yes, Mr.
I do,
Scher.
and bear with me because I don't have the technology to have both this screen and the minutes up, so so we'll sort of muddle through it. I got a couple of things. On page 4, the second bullet, the third line, it's a typo. It should be discussed with the D, not discusses with the S.
Which page was that on, did you say?
Page 4.
Page 4.
Third line begins population increase discussed.
Got it. Thank you.
Page 5, second bullet, it's the courtyard, there's a reference to the courtyard not having, it should be courtyard, not multifamily, if that makes, hopefully that makes sense. It wasn't that I was talking about a multifamily project on Southfield, it was this courtyard project.
And which bullet point did you say that was?
I believe that's the
Second
second bullet.
Second?
Instead of look at the multifamily homes, you say look at the courtyard homes? Is that what
That's
you're saying?
correct.
Okay.
Then the fourth bullet on that page, I think it's the first line where it talks about on some blocks, 75% or more of the housing, I mean, I think it should say has been torn down and rebuilt. Again, I apologize for not, I should have printed this out. Next time I'll try and do that.
I don't see that.
I don't see that either.
No.
So can you read, what's the fourth bullet?
Your fourth bullet?
The fourth bullet on page 5.
Page 5.
Original Birmingham neighborhoods no longer exist since there are now new 2-story large houses next to 1-story 1950s ranches. It is too simple to say that the city needs to preserve neighborhood character since the neighborhood character has changed. Some of the smaller homes in Birmingham could potentially be saved by declaring them historic, but the city cannot undo the different kinds of houses that have been built.
Okay, well, my note doesn't make sense to either me or you, so we'll just move on. Now,
Okay.
on page 7,
Okay.
there's a reference to worth, and I think the words should be growth.
There's a mention of worth and it should be growth.
Does that sound right?
Was it something that you said?
It says growth, population growth in the city. That's the fourth paragraph. It says growth twice.
All right, I mean, my note just is that there's a worth that should have been growth, so
No, I think it looks right, Mr. Chair.
okay, fine.
Okay. Anything else?
No, not me.
All right, anyone else? Any other comments on the minutes?
None.
Hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended here tonight?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Scher. Do we have a second? We have a motion by Mr. Scher. Do we have a second? Looks like Ms. Whippleboyce is raising her hand. So we'll go a second by Ms. Whippleboyce. Could we unmute her, please?
She's not muted.
Good now.
Who
I
was?
was, but I'm back.
Excellent. So we have a motion by Mr. Scher, a second by Ms. Whippleboyce. Any conversation by the board? We have a motion to approve the minutes as amended tonight. Could we please call the roll?
Daniel Scher.
I'm sorry, if that was me, it's yes.
Okay. Chanel Boyce.
Yes.
Robin Boyle.
Yes.
Scott Klein.
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries.
Yes.
Bert Kosek.
Yes.
Brian Williams.
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. Motion unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving along, chairperson's comments. Not much tonight. We are obviously conducting this meeting in accordance with Governor Whitmer's executive orders, and we will do our best to ensure that technology does not get in the way. But as you have just seen, that is not a guarantee. So we will do our best. We have a bit of a mixed bag tonight, but it's some interesting parts of land planning. So let's just move into it. Jana, any changes to the agenda as published?
Yes, under unfinished business, the Jack's Car Wash site at 34745 Woodward, they have requested to be they were postponed to today. They've requested again to postpone to September 23rd, the next site plan review meeting.
And before we go into that, just for reference, do we have an availability on that agenda?
We do not.
Okay.
So the next meeting would be, let me get my phone up, October 28th.
Okay. Okay. Any other changes to the agenda as published?
No, but could we have a motion to postpone it to, or
Well, I
continue
was
it?
just going to get into unfinished business.
Sorry. Okay.
Someone wants to get out of here early tonight. Let's move into unfinished business, item 8. So 34745 Woodward Avenue, Jack's Car Wash. As Ms. Eckers said, they've requested to be postponed. Janet, did they give any reason for their request for postponement, given perhaps some of the board's comments last time about how many times we seem to postpone this one?
They did. They mentioned that they had been talking to MDOT and they had received a final answer from MDOT about the use of the right-of-way, but they had only received it like a week ago or something, and they wanted to have it all in writing and have it all reviewed by our attorney and our folks ahead of time, so they didn't run into the same situation they had previous. Discussion at the last minute with our city attorney without a formal response. So they felt it would be better to postpone it so that all of that can be addressed ahead of time of the meeting.
Okay, so it seems like they're making an attempt to get their ducks in a row before they come back. Is that fair to say?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Board, conversation, is there a desire to push this forward to, I believe we said October 28th, Jana, if we are so inclined?
That's correct.
Mr. Williams?
I'll move that 34745 Woodward Jack's Car Wash be postponed from today's date to October 28, 2020.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Williams, and we have a second by Mr. Jeffries. Is there any conversation at the board level about the motion? Seeing none, again, the motion is to postpone until October 28th. we will take it to the public. Would anyone in the public care to comment on the motion? If you would like to comment, please use your raise hand function, which is at the bottom center of your screen in the command console. I'll give you a moment to do so. If there's anyone in the public that would like to comment, please use your raise hand function. I do not see anybody wishing to comment. And we will therefore bring it back to vote on the motion to postpone Jack's Car Wash to October 28th. Could we please call the roll?
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries,
Yes.
Bert Kozak,
Yes.
Daniel Scher,
Yes.
Janelle Wilpel-Boyce,
Yes.
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Scott Klein.
Yes. Motion unanimous. Thank you very much. So now let's move into a public hearing, and I will officially open the public hearing into a proposed ordinance amendment to Chapter 126 zoning related to glazing. And is this Nick?
This
Yeah.
is Nick.
Nick, please.
I feel like we should rename this hazing.
This isn't fun, Brian?
I don't know. I only have fun
I don't know.
17 times something comes up.
Alrighty, so the basic gist here, no surprises thrown at you, no real substantive changes other than what was discussed at the previous meeting where this was discussed on July 22nd, after hearing from our glass professional and hashing out a little bit. The last option that we wanted to explore was the potential for low iron content, the potential for low iron content in our glazing requirements and our window standards. Based on a little bit of research I did myself, it seemed to confirm all of the things that Craig from Guardian Glass told us last time. You saw in your report, I included a photograph of essentially what we're discussing. I was a little bit torn on whether or not to include it because it's such a gross oversimplification of what we're talking about. But it does help explain. It doesn't have the other building materials around it. There's nobody inside. There's a white background. So just for the purposes of the people at home and for the purposes of discussion, that's green tint of the higher iron content that's in normal glass is what we're the last little puzzle piece here. So you saw in the report again in Article 4, Section 4.09, I just added a little bit in point 2 here that storefront glass shall have low iron content. That's the crux of the discussion tonight. Other than that, let me find my language. We have a suggested action from you from the Planning Division, which is to recommend approval to the City Commission the amendments to Article 3, Section 3.04E, Article 4, Section 4.90A, and Article 9, Section 9.02 of the zoning ordinance to adjust the glazing standards to redefine clear glazing and to eliminate lightly tinted glazing. With that, as always, open to questions and
Hey, Nick, could you quickly, for the record, just read the new definition of clear glazing? Because while the low iron content is the other substantial change, I think the definition of clear glazing is really significant to this conversation. And we've talked about it a ton, but there might be people watching that don't quite know what it is.
Good.
Could you please just quickly explain?
Certainly. So the new proposed definition of clear glazing that we have is glass and other transparent elements of building facades with a minimum visible light transmittance of 66% and a reflectivity of 15% or less. Briefly explaining those numbers, our figure is currently 80%, which the reason we're discussing this is over several months, maybe even a year now, maybe longer, we've gotten a lot of pushback on that 80%. It's hard to get glass. It's increasingly expensive to get glass. And what we've learned is that you can get the same clarity, the same clear clearness, if that's, I think that's a word, with as low as 66% glass here in this instance, which is the lowest visual light transmittance that you can get with security glass. That's double laminated, low E coating, the whole shebang. And, you know, also just for the people at home, we required clear glazing on the building, the front building facades. So
by reducing it to 66%, we're allowing the e-coating to be applied to help with the energy code and provide a more energy efficient building. But by adding the reflectivity component, we are ensuring the ability to see inside the store from the outside, which is the whole intent. Is that correct?
that's correct. That was the intent from the beginning, and that's how the 80% was happened upon in the first place. That's correct.
Great. I don't mean to harp on it. I just know the city commission is going to read this set of minutes, and if we don't spell out why we're doing what we're doing, they may become confused.
Yeah, that's good. Good.
Mr. Boyle.
Yes, before we go on, if I recall correctly, there was a discussion towards the end of the previous time we had this on the agenda, a concern that I raised, and I think others did as well, that are we imposing additional costs on owners and others who are required then to go for low iron content glass? I actually think we asked for some comparative costs, if I'm right. And if so, do you have them?
Mr. Boyle, I was unable to get a cost. I would have had to, the way these websites are set up, I would have had to request a quote and go through that whole process. I wasn't able to speak to anybody that could give me a good answer.
Okay. Well, I wonder if either Mr. Kozak or Ms. Whippleboyce might have some input on that. Ms. Whippleboyce?
I did a little research of my own. I actually got two pieces of glass so I could compare them side by side. I was told by my glass supplier that the low iron glass can be as much as 25% more expensive than the other. And in comparing the pieces side by side, I genuinely believe that it is not necessary for us to require the low iron content glass. These pictures that are included in our packet show a pretty dramatic difference, and probably because they're on white paper. And looking at the edge of glass is probably not, well, it's shown in our packet, the edge. We won't be seeing the edge, of course, in the storefront applications of this. Side by side, held up to a window, perhaps instead of, or to daylight instead of on a white sheet of paper. There is a little more green in the one, but I don't think it is so bad as to require it, particularly at a 25% increase in material costs. So that's my opinion, and that's based on the research that I did with a supplier that I work with here in town.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Whippleboyce. Mr. Kozak, you had your hand up. Did you have any other comments?
Yeah, well, it all depends, I think, on how much glass you're obviously buying. My most recent experience, I think it was about a 10% upgrade. On that particular building, I wanted to avoid any tint whatsoever. I wanted to maximize the transparency and not make a statement with color of glass. So at least for me, it was important in that particular building. I think it's better as a low iron glass. You know, typically if we're thinking about downtown storefronts, these are, 20, 30, 40 foot sections. Occasionally you get the Daxton Hotel and that sort of thing, so it's going to be more. But I think we're only requiring it on the first floor. Is that correct? This doesn't pertain to floors above the first floor. So I was almost going to like shift toward it being a requirement because it is, you know, so what's the spirit and intent of what we're trying to do? I think we're trying to go back to what glass may have looked like back in the 20s or something, which I think would not have had this sort of green tint to it, but I could go either way. I have not studied it as closely as Janelle did. So I'd go with her on this one if others are inclined to as well.
Thank you. We'll go to Nick first for clarification and then Mr. Scherer. So Nick?
Yeah, sure. So Bert, just, you had mentioned that we were only requiring this on the first floor. I just wanted to make sure to point out that I did, since we were lowering this visual light transmittance, the lightly tinted, glass, or lightly, what did I call it? Excuse me. Yeah, lightly tinted glazing just kind of goes away naturally. So I had written that clear glazing is required on the storefront facade. So I'm not sure that limits it to only the first floor.
Okay. Mr. Scherer, you had your hand up?
I did, thank you. I did a little checking as well. The quote I got was 30% more, but it's certainly within the margin of error for what Janelle had. The other thing that I was told is that low iron glass is more often used in retail display cases and as a backing for like whiteboards if you want to have a color that shows through. I walked by both the Daxton and Brookside, one of which is low iron and one of which isn't, and to my untrained eye, both looked like they satisfied the intent of the ordinance, and I couldn't say that one was clearer than another.
Okay. Any other comments from board members?
Does the going back to what Nick just told us, does that need, did everybody understand that this would apply to all floors of the facade elevation? And if so, are we fine with that? And remind me, what facade is what? Any elevation that faces a street or public right of way, or?
Nick, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sorry, I was on a different, excuse me. So, let's see, because I was thinking of principal building frontage when you had said that, but that's not the same. So I'm currently seeing if I can look up that definition for you real time because I don't have that memorized.
Anna, do you remember? I know this has come up in the past.
Yeah, so facade is just defined as the vertical exterior surface of a building that is set parallel to a setback line. So there are four facades to a building, a general building. So when I say the storefront facade, it would figure that that's the front, principal entrance facade.
What if you have a corner piece of
Well,
land?
if I could
Like
move the
Daxton.
waters a little bit more. The building official has in the past determined that facade should be defined as the vertical exterior surface of a building that is set parallel to a frontage line. Nick, you're correct. It says setback line in the ordinance. He's indicated that it should say a frontage line because it was transposed or changed accidentally when it came in from the old version of the zoning ordinance. So if that's the case, then the frontage would be deemed by whatever's the address. So if it's a corner building in the Daxton Hotel, for instance, on Brown and North Old or South Old Woodward would be the frontage. So that first, the facade facing South Old Woodward must be.
So, I mean, so that's illogical, right? I mean, it's, we would only require this on one elevation and the other elevation could be different.
Nick?
So if the water wasn't murky, I'll make it muddy, almost opaque. I discussed that same issue, Jana, with an example of 469479, specifically about the parking, which is unrelated here. But he actually agreed that a building facade is any, or a frontage building facade is anything that faces a street. So Bert, in this instance, if it's a corner lot, any of those facades that face a street would be. And I know we're getting murky here, and I still.
Well, it's not murky. I understand.
That's clear.
Yeah, that
let's-
makes a lot of sense.
Yes, so let's find a way to create that language in the ordinance so somebody who's trying to interpret it isn't as confused as we just were.
Yeah. So could I just say?
Well, I mean, we're at a public hearing, so I don't know how much crafting we can really do here technically.
Yeah, that's true.
Janet, do you feel, and Nick, do you feel that the ordinance language is presented and the interpretation of the building official makes it clear that any facade that fronts a public street is covered? Or do we need to postpone this and go back and fine tune?
Nick, can you read that section, that line again of the definition?
Of the proposed definition?
Yes, the proposed.
Oh, well, that particular blurb isn't in the definition. It's in the architectural standards in the downtown overlay.
Okay, sorry, can you read that?
Yeah, which says clear glazing is required on the storefront facade. Windows shall not be blocked with opaque materials. Yada, yada.
And of course you cut out and I couldn't hear that, so can you repeat
Oh,
it?
so the total again, it's clear glazing is required on the storefront facade. It had originally said clear glazing is required on the first floor.
Okay, storefront facade. I think regardless of the definition of facade, if there's a storefront, I mean, that's pretty easy to me that's the front facing facade. And if it was on a corner, it could potentially be both because they both face a street. I think we're okay, but we can run it by the building official in any event.
Mr. Kozak, your thoughts?
I'm just looking at Brian Williams.
Right.
I just think this needs to be, well, first, if I had a corner lot, I'm not sure why I would treat one different than the other, just logically.
That's why it doesn't make sense to have the facade only that faces frontage line, because there's at least at least 3 facades on a building, right? Whether they face the street or not, there's still a facade.
Right. Well, I go to the lawyers on this one, so.
Well, my sixth
Yeah,
sense is,
Mr. Williams.
I think storefront is misleading if we're talking about a corner with 2 fronts. I mean, definitionally, it's misleading to me.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there is a definition for storefront in the ordinance. And the
Okay.
definition is for storefront, the portion of the building at the first story of a frontage line.
Mhm.
Oh, that's
So
good.
that means it is only the first story
Mm-hmm.
and it is only the front lot line. So the part of the building that faces the front, which is the part it has the address on, which is the street. So again, going back to the Daxton Hotel, it would be the facade facing South Old Woodward.
Well, frontage line is defined as any building facade that faces a street.
Correct. And that is another one that the consistent and the frontage line is that which has the address.
Okay.
Fine.
So, Mr. Chair.
I mean, I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Williams because if what we're trying to get at is that we want people to walk down the street and look in the stores.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a corner store, aren't we really thinking that, we want all those windows to be visible rather than
Right.
just the one that has the address?
Right.
So we want them the same.
All right. I mean, I'm going to suggest to the board that we're getting into a battle of the thesaurus here, and I think it's important for us to be clear on this. Otherwise, we're going to be doing this again in 6 months when the first corner lot comes in and a city commissioner is unhappy with what he sees. So,
Well, they're going to be unhappy because we haven't
right.
defined it as specifically as we could.
So I'm going to make a recommendation, unfortunately, that I think we need to postpone this hearing. And I don't know if that's the correct terminology, Jana, or not, but I think we need to come back to a study session and clean that up. And I think you've heard from enough of the board that perhaps the low iron could go, though perhaps we could finalize that conversation at the study session, unless the board is against that course.
I might recommend if you're going to send it back that you don't even need to post or continue the public hearing.
Right.
We'll
We have
just,
to renotice anyway.
right, because we're going to change it.
Ms. Whipple-Boyce.
I just wanted to say, if Bert is finding that the low iron is only a 10% increase, and he's talking whole exterior buildings, in my job, I'm talking about interior glass. And so the quantity that I'm ordering is far less than Bert. And my prices are showing a 25% increase. If we're going to postpone this, would it not be worth Nick trying to figure out which number is more accurate? And may that influence us going forward with that decision.
So what you're suggesting, in effect, is we need a study session, not to schedule a new public hearing,
Right.
so we can clarify.
We need to just end this hearing and come back to a study session on this item.
Yep.
And I would say, I believe that if I'm not mistaken, the library edition was not low iron, if that's correct. So you've actually got a building in a public space that was recently constructed to see what that looks like.
But if I may, I also believe that there's a percentage of tinting in that glass that we wouldn't be okay with in this new proposed language.
Right.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah,
It may not be a good example of something to look at for this purpose.
All right, any final words before we close the hearing? Stuart.
Can we include also, make sure that we're all straight on the ordinance and all on facade and all these different terms?
Yes.
I mean, we shouldn't have the building official have to interpret it to be what it should be. We should just fix it.
Right.
That's a fair point. It's a great point. Last word, Mr. Kozik.
So Dan, you referenced the Daxton and Brookside,
Right,
correct?
yes.
Is one low iron and the other one not?
Yes.
Yeah, Daxton's low iron and Brookside's not.
Okay, so you said you couldn't make, and they're right not next to one another, but you found both acceptable.
Yes,
You couldn't find any visual differences.
Yeah.
And neither one's really fully open for business yet, so it could be dark inside or whatever. But so I'd sort of go with your observation there. And Janelle, regarding my experience with the 10%, this was a huge window wall system. So I imagine on smaller segments, like Dan's, you said you found 30%. I'm not sure where you found that. So there's probably quite a swing. Whoever brought this up originally was probably concerned about putting, a burden on somebody who's trying to develop a small building or make improvements or something. So I'd be okay going with the, not requiring low iron, but obviously I think we have to fix the language.
Okay.
So there's no interpretation issues.
Okay.
All right. I will throw it, since we are in a public hearing, to the public. Is there anyone in the public that would care to comment? You can use the raise hand feature at the bottom center of your screen. Seeing none, I will return it to the board, and we will close the public hearing on glazing. Ironically, we were seeking clear glazing, and we got a whole lot of mud. So hopefully we can do better next time. So let's move along. Item G and H, in a sense, the special land use permit amendment and a final site plan and design review for 525 North Old Woodward, which is Lux Bistro. For those watching at home, we typically talk about these together since they are so intertwined. However, they are two different and separate approvals that we will need to make tonight, one way or the other, based on the board's discretion. So who is this? Is Jana, is this you?
Yes, it is.
All right.
And I'm just trying to get the plan up on the screen, so bear with me for a second.
It did appear for a minute, Janet.
It did, and then it disappeared. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So I think most of you are familiar with where Lux is located at 525 North Old Woodward, just north of, well, between Harmon and Vinewood Avenue, parcel zone O2 and D2. What the applicant is requesting is to expand the existing Lux storefront, which is currently 31 feet wide, into the storefront space to the south and combine that space and still be Lux at 525 North Old Woodward. That would then make the storefront 59 feet wide instead of the 31 feet wide it is. As most of us know, Lux is a bistro, so they are limited to 65 seats inside, no more than 10 of those that can be at a bar. And with the new definition of bistro that we amended not too long ago, they are limited to 65 seats outside as well. So what they're proposing to do is expand into that storefront to the south, move their door over, keep most of the interior of the restaurant the way it is now, but make a few changes, expand the kitchen, expand the cooler, move the host stand, and separate spread the tables out a little bit more. Obviously, with all of the social distancing issues that we have that have come up in the recent months, this gives them a chance to spread out. They are proposing to add seats though, because currently now they have 54 seats inside, 10 of which are at the bar. They're proposing to go up to 64 seats. So that is still below the 65 seat cap, and they're only proposing 5 at the bar. So they're planning to keep the existing bar, which if I can get my cursor on the screen.
Yeah, we got it. We can see it.
It's there.
This is the bar area down here.
Yep.
And they're proposing to have only 5 seats there. As you can see in the new, so basically their old storefront stops here at this wall in the center. So they're going to open it through to the south. They're adding another counter here, which, you know, you might say looks like a bar. They have indicated it is not a bar. That is, it will be a lunch counter, and they'll be doing like salad preps and food prep over here. And that way people can come up there if they want to wait for their food, if they're getting a carry out, or if they want to come and order something, they can eat there, but it will not have liquor behind the bar here. So you can see that their existing tables are here still. They've spread them out a little bit more. This area is the same. The door that is at the north end of this elevation here will remain to provide a connection to the outdoors. The door that is currently located in this area will be filled in, and it will be filled in with glass. And you can see it here. This area is what's existing. That's their existing door. They're going to fill in that opening with glass to match the existing windows there, and those are aluminum storefront windows with clear glass and matte black frames. And then they're not changing much on the outside of the building. Obviously, the roofing is staying the same, the brick is staying the same. Their gooseneck lighting that's already there will stay the same. They're proposing to paint that to match the gooseneck lighting that's on their side already. They will be adding these valances here that you currently see on the Lux side now. They'll be adding them on the expanded storefront as well. And those are proposed to be in slate and parchment colors of sunbrella material. They're also proposing new signage on the canopy here. And the signage, of course, is based on the width of the building. And since they're now going to be, for the space, 59 feet wide, they get 59 square feet of signage. They're proposing a grand total of 4.75 square feet, so they're well under. as you may know, we changed the definition of canopy and awning signage and the requirements for that in the sign ordinance recently. So this does comply because it says that you can have a canopy. It can have no more than an 18-inch valance. This has a 12-inch valance, and you can't cover more than 33% of that valance with signage. They're well under that. So the signage does meet that requirement as well. They are not proposing any changes to the bistro. They're minor menu changes, but overall the same concept, the same atmosphere, a classic American menu with lunch and dinner that they'll still be offering. They've indicated that they've had quite an uptick in pickups and so on during the COVID pandemic. So they are moving their host stand over here and providing a little bit more room so that people can pick up the carry-out orders here. With regards to outdoor dining, they previously had 12 outdoor dining seats, which you can see here on the left. So they are proposing to expand that. And remember, when I say they had 12 previously, I was talking pre-COVID, the permanent approval of the special land use, not the expanded seating they have now, which is temporary based on the COVID-19 pandemic. So they are proposing to increase their seating to 48 seats outside. They are proposing to use the same types of existing planters that they have now and then add some more in this area. The planters, you can see on this page, there's two types. There's the round type, and then there's this rectangular Veritech planter that's proposed. Again, the enclosure is only required by the MLCC, so it doesn't have to be a railing per se, but it can be planters. They're keeping the street trees as is. The streetscape that's there is the broom finished concrete as well as the exposed aggregate in the furnishing zone along the street. They're keeping that. They are proposing, as they have now, the tables against the building. They're still keeping the tables against the building. They're proposing the 5-foot pedestrian path, then next, and then more furniture in the furnishing zones up against the curb. So as we've talked about many times in the past, the 2016 plan, we've decided, the planning board has decided in the past to look at it on a case-by-case basis and see what makes sense for the block. This particular arrangement does make sense for this block because the path is in the middle, which is exactly the condition that you have as you move further down the street at Salvatore Scalapini's. So it's consistent. The pedestrians aren't having to zig and zag to get through there. And instead of providing the 5-foot wide clearance here, they're providing 5.5 feet. So they do meet that requirement as well. Let's see. The bistro, the Lux Bistro, is currently serving from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. every day and 11 a.m. to 12 a.m. on Sunday. We do need to clarify the hours of operation for the outdoor dining area because this property is immediately adjacent to the back and side of multifamily residentially zoned properties. So they do have to close the outdoor dining area at midnight. They're not proposing to change anything with regards to landscaping. As I said, they're keeping their street trees. They're just adding those extra pots out the front. They're not proposing any changes to parking. They're in their parking assessment district, so they don't need to provide parking. They don't need to provide loading. The pedestrian access is staying primarily the same, though, as I mentioned, the door is moving slightly from here to the south, and this door that provides the indoor-outdoor connection will be remaining as is. With regards to the design review, as I mentioned, when the door moves over, they'll be using the existing door and the existing hardware, literally just transferring it over to the south. So that'll match. The brick will stay the same. The roofing will stay the same. The existing windows will stay the same. They'll add this new window in here to fill in the old door opening, which will match what's there. The trim will stay the same, the fascia, the light fixtures, all of that, but it'll be painted to match what's there. They're proposing using a black paint, a Sherwin-Williams Black Fox for all of that painting. And the glass that they are proposing in the opening from where the door is now will be 80% VLT on the first floor facade. So it will be clear glazing. They do meet the 70% glazing that's required for a bistro. They're at 72%, so they meet that requirement. The outdoor dining area does have a trash receptacle and a service center area here with the hand sanitizing station, which is required right now during COVID. But under the ordinance, they're definitely required to have a trash receptacle, which they do. They are proposing new furniture to match the existing, and you can see the photos of the furnishings here. What they're proposing is black powder coated gar bay head tables, or sorry, chairs with resin seats, and then the tables are gar Antoinette in black metal. They're proposing 7 new 4-top tables, 3 new round 2-top tables, and an extra 38 chairs, as I said, to increase from 12 to 48 seats outdoors. They are not proposing any umbrellas at this time. Comments from the departments. We have received all of those. There were no concerns from the engineering department, the public services department, the police department, or the building department. The fire department's only comments were they didn't have any concerns with the proposed expansion, but they would like to see floor plans that include the proposed load, egress, travel distance, et cetera, to be submitted for review and approval, though they didn't see any red flags on the floor plan that was submitted. Also, they wanted to see plans for the commercial kitchen hood suppression system so that they could review that as you get closer to the building permitting time. So that's essentially the review. The recommendation is that the planning board consider recommending approval to the city commission of both the SLUP and the final site plan, revised final site plan and design review for this project, with a couple of conditions. One, that the applicant clarify the official hours of operation for the outdoor dining area to verify it's not past 11 a.m. 2, that they provide specification sheets.
11 p.m.
12 a.m. actually.
12 a.m. That they provide spec sheets for the planters and outdoor furnishings prior to appearing before the city commission. We do have the colors in the glass now, and that they submit a revised contract with the city, signed revised contract with the city of Birmingham. We actually do have that now. They did submit that after this report was written, and that they comply with the requests of all departments. And we do have the same motion language for the SLUP and the final site plan. Of course, you can change the conditions around from one to the other if you prefer. But that's it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Jana, just for clarification, if they've submitted number 3, does that need to be a condition anymore?
Nope.
What about 2? Did you say they did submit that? I mean,
2, they have submitted the colors and the glazing specs, but they have not submitted specs for the planters or outdoor furnishings. We have photos of what they have now that they're matching, but we don't have spec sheet.
Fair enough. Okay. Mr. Williams.
Yes, I've observed the bar from a distance as I walk by, but why are we reducing the number of seats in the bar from 10 to 5? Do we know?
Well, I would say that would be a question for the applicant. My guess is because they would like to maximize their seating and they can only go to 65, and now they're at 64, so they don't really have enough seats to add another 5 at the bar. But if I may, I know there are several folks here that may wish to speak on this matter. If you wish to raise your hand, Mr. Bongiovanni is here, Ron and Roman are here. So whoever would like to answer that question, if you raise your hand, I will unmute you.
Well, while they're doing that, are there any other questions specifically for Jana related to the application before we bring in the applicant and the architect? Ms. Whippleboyce?
Jana, in the far northeast corner of the plan at the curb, there are 6 circles. What are those?
Those are round tables with chairs.
Round tables with chairs. Okay, so
Yes.
a little bistro table. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Williams, did you have a question? Did I cut you off?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Mr. Jeffries, any other questions before we bring in the applicant?
Hey, Jana, just to be clear, if I drove by right now, I drove by last night, this looks like the exact tables that they've had since the COVID thing. So is that right?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. So it would be just status quo on that for now.
Okay. Any other questions of Jana before we ask the applicant? Seeing none, Mr. Bongiovanni, welcome. Is there anything you'd like to add? Perhaps you can answer Mr. Williams' question as well. Nope.
Can everybody hear me?
Nope.
No, we cannot.
No, we can't.
We can hear you very, very, at a very low volume.
See, is that any better there?
Wow.
It's a little staticky.
Try again.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Wonderful. Yes. Perfect.
Thanks. I speak for my family a little bit today. Brother and sister Kara and Larry are also on this video call, I believe. And the question that was last raised was why reduce the seats at the bar specifically? And we sense that there's a necessity for a little bit more spacing within the restaurant, and that there is definitely a in our operations and what we're experiencing already, and anticipating what the winter will be like and into next spring. It feels like some of those capacities need to be spread out a little bit. I've stared at this plan a lot. I'm a big part of that part of the process for our family, and it's certainly we are trying to create a kitchen on one side of the restaurant that really supports this newer business that we've developed, and also create a little bit more spacing within the dining room so that guests feel a little more comfortable. I was a part of the original design of Lux, and one of the great parts of it was the fact that you sat shoulder to shoulder to everybody in that settee. And unfortunately today, I'm afraid that that's not going to go on for a little while. And there might be a little while before we take it where we feel comfortable again for that. And so I think this design that Daryl and Roman and everybody's worked on has kind of met that thinking. As many of you may know, my family, my dad signed a lease for the shoe store many years ago, and we've been paying for that for a long time. Over time, we've had different thoughts of that it could be a different concept and such, but with the way business is today and the niche that Lux has made in the market here on the north side of town and such, it's just been a go-to. They haven't missed a day since COVID began. They've been in a carry-out operation for the whole period of time that it was open, or that things were shut down, and then they reopened as a restaurant, and they've proven to be kind of a a staple, so to speak. Like, they meet a need for this area, and what this design does is allow the employees to work a little more vigorously to meet the needs of the guest. It allows us to expand upon the carryout business that I don't think is going away. And it also allows us to be a little bit more socially appropriate within the restaurant. And yet, it's still, one of the things that Ron and both my dad always reminded me of is that, don't change a good thing. It's really important not to mess with a good thing. And Lux is a good thing, don't get me wrong. But part of what's changed is this tightness that we have together. And we're not going to be swinging at a concert anytime soon, and we're not going to be doing certain things. And Lux had some of those features, unfortunately. And so this is meant to be an adaptation of what Lux always was, just spread out a little bit. And that's really our thinking.
Great. Appreciate that. Do any board members have any other questions for the applicant or his esteemed design team, who we welcome to the meeting?
Nice guy. Ron's on here too. I just think he's got his video on.
He's hidden.
I tried to get him to start his video, but he wouldn't do it.
You probably don't want to see him right now. Just
no, you don't.
That's fine. Thrilled to see his name. So, Roman, Daryl, Ron, anything else to add from a design perspective? Okay.
Wow, I think Jana covered it, and Joe explained it very well too.
Okay. Board, any other questions for the applicant? I'm going to pose a question to both the ownership as well as the design professionals, and I don't necessarily expect an answer tonight. But to coin a phrase from a TV show that was just an article in online just today or the other day, winter is coming for restaurants, and the outdoor seating, which has probably been at least helpful, is going to be in jeopardy soon. If there's anything that you have idea-wise that the city of Birmingham could do to assist somehow, and I'm not leading with that question. Please, it's up to tenants, owners, design professionals like you to please provide input. If there are changes, even temporary changes related to the ordinance or how we allow outdoor seating or whatnot that could help you through the winter, I would hope that you would please forward that to either this body or the city commission. So I will leave it at that unless you've got a soapbox you'd like to stand on for 45 seconds.
Oh, Ron has a soapbox or two, but we appreciate that more than we could tell you. And in fact, you can expect to get some input from us because we'd love to share.
Well, and if I could add something, this is breaking news. On Monday night at the City Commission, the City Commission did approve a resolution to extend the temporary outdoor dining due to COVID-19 through the off-season outdoor dining season, which would be running from November 1st through March 31st. So if you want to go to the agenda and look at that, there is a resolution that is going to allow some temporary type structures and enclosure systems to allow restaurants to keep their outdoor dining so that they can hopefully survive through the winter. There's not a specification as to exactly what it has to look like, but the code requirements are in there with regards to building code and fire protection codes and that kind of thing.
Great.
So if you need any more information on that, feel free to give me a call.
Great.
Thank you, John.
And I'd even suggest you extend that to pickup areas for carry out, curbside. I know a lot of us want to support our restaurants through the winter, and any ideas you have, please do forward them. Thank you.
Well, bravo to everybody. I mean, that's great stuff. Great news.
Thank you.
All right, with that, since I hear nothing else at the board right now, I will take it to the public. Is there anyone in the public that would care to comment on the proposed changes to this development? Please, if you do, please use your raise hand function, the center console at the bottom of your screen. I see, oh, please, I'm gonna, is it Mr. or Mrs. J? I apologize, I don't mean to butcher your name. Shama J, if I'm saying that correctly? K-S-H-A-M-A, last name J, J-A-Y?
I am trying to unmute them.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
There you go.
Hello?
Hello, if you could please state your name and address for the record, please, and then provide your comment.
Yes, my name is Shama. Shama J. And sorry, am I like?
Turn off the phone or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you're echoing a bit.
Okay, let me just. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Sure, perfect, please.
Sorry about that. I live actually very close to Lux in one of those multifunction homes. My concern about, I have a question for Mr. Bongiovanni regarding the curbside pickup and parking, because currently we are being inundated by all the parking and people trespassing in our area. So I was wondering whether there was any plan for accommodating all that. I mean, I'm a big fan of Lux. I'm there pretty much all the time doing pickup, but I don't have to park and pick up.
Gotcha. So you're saying that you're having concerns with how parking is using, or vehicles are using your lot, your drive aisles in order to go pick it up?
That is correct.
Well,
yes, I have a lot of things. I pick up litter all the time. There's cigarette butts. So I know they talk about a trash receptacle. I haven't seen that being utilized. So I would like to know whether that's going to be taken care of, whether they can assure us that we'll have our quality of life not taken away.
Well, Mr. Bongiovanni, I know a lot of this is the reality of a restaurant living, residents living next to a restaurant in an urban community, but at the same token, it takes a village and it takes a good owner to work with neighbors. Are you willing to work with your neighbors to try and?
Certainly. One of the greatest things was this park and fly that we've done in the city this period of time, and it helps with the drop-offs. And she's absolutely right. Our carryout business is way up over previous periods of time. And you know what else will help us during in the future? The North End's been kind of tough with that construction that's gone on at the Pearl at the previous apartment complex that it really ate up a lot of parking on that whole north end of town. So I do believe we'll be in better shape as time goes forward. But anything the city can do to help us with those parking flies, those are great. Those are to get people in and out really fast. It helps us a lot. And as far as the dirty stuff goes, she should feel confident that we'll attend to it. That's our responsibility.
You're gonna put signs out there because it's your parking lot too, right?
We feel responsible for that as much as anything else. Yes.
I know. So you will do an outreach with your patrons to try and help educate them on where to be and what not to do.
I think the most important thing is that my staff is in terms of, hearing that there's cigarette butts and stuff, we'll try to work really hard on that. Okay. And
Wonderful.
Certainly the parking too.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public have any comments on this particular motion? Mr. Emerine, alternate Emerine.
I guess I'll be speaking as a member of the public today since I'm an alternate. My only question was, and Jana, please remind me if I'm wrong, but the plan depicted 64 seats on the inside, correct? And the ordinance allows for 65. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm just curious, maybe it's a question for the applicant and then followed by a question for the planning board, but why, particularly if winter's coming, why would they limit? Why not add one more bar stool? Why not go to 65? That seat is important. And if the applicant wanted that, could the board tonight provide a motion that allows them that extra seat? That's it.
Okay.
Why would you limit yourself? Go for the 65.
It's more of an oversight than anything else.
Well,
so I wouldn't limit that. If the board can make a motion for 65 and maybe they could throw another seat in there, or maybe we could make the approval for that, but I'm in the public today, so I will leave that to the board.
it sounds like you're bucking for a bar stool.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
A brass tag on it?
No.
All right. And seriously, anyone else from the public have any other comments? Looking around, I do not see any hands going up. All right, so we will bring it back to the board. Thank you very much. Any conversation at the board level? Mr. Emerine raises a point about allowing an extra bar stool. Not an extra, but an additional one. Mr. Wood.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense because right now every bar seat is taken at between 4 and 6 o'clock. So I think we're going to add a seat. They should add it at the bar. I want to make a comment too. I think the Bongiovanni family has 3 facilities at the north end. They've made a huge difference in a positive way in the community, particularly for residents who can walk to these facilities, not just drive. And I do agree that the carryout business has been really fantastic. I'm encouraged because it's a little uncomfortable with the carryout to go into the facility as it exists now because it is cramped. So I think that makes a lot of sense. During the initial stages of COVID, they actually brought the carryout to the car and they've stopped doing that. So I'm encouraged by their expansion and spreading out within the facility because it is pretty crowded. But I want to commend the Bongiovanni family for really all 3 facilities. If you go back in the time when they started with Salvatore Scalapini, we've added 2 facilities to the north end. They're packed most of the time, and they're really the only enduring, consistent facilities at the north end. And they made a very positive contribution, not just to the city, but particularly to the residents at the north end in a positive way. So I commend the family. I know they recently lost their father, but as far as I can tell, they haven't skipped a beat.
Great. Any other comments from the board? Any discussion? Mr. Boyle.
Yeah, I would echo much that Brian said. I would also say that they gave us in the very early days a model of what a bistro would be like, and I think they've proven the veracity of this idea, and it's now been operating for a long time. If some of the board perhaps weren't around, but there was a proposal to actually add additional outdoor seating to the north of the building, which was always going to be very awkward because of the slope and the adjacency to the housing. And I'm delighted that didn't happen. And I'm even more delighted to know that they're going to now take over the shoe store and add to that facade, if we're allowed to use that term, on the block. Linking the two restaurants. The only personal comment I would say that whatever you do, if you remove crispy arugula potatoes from your menu, I will not be there again. So, if you want my vote, I need that to be written in stone.
I'm sure that's not allowed, Mr. Boyle, but
no, I'm sure it's not.
Duly noted.
But with that, I'd make a motion. If others want to add in before that, please feel free.
I've seen no hands.
We need to have separate motions.
Yeah, we do need separate motions. So Mr. Boyle, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I'm looking for the appropriate I think you want the SLUP first, correct?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. It's getting a bit messy. Am I looking at 10.0 approval criteria for SLUP, Jana?
No, you need to go to 12.0 sample motion language.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. I would move that we approve the application for it's taking me right to the final site plan and not the SLUP.
No, it's down at the bottom of the page, Mr. Boyle.
Keep going down.
Okay, I'm working on it. Okay, I would move to approve to the City Commission a SLUP amendment to allow Lux Bistro at 525 Northfield Woodward to expand into the storefront to the south with the following conditions. I think we've changed one. Help me as I go along. The applicant must submit official hours of operation to assure the outdoor dining is not open past 12 a.m. The applicant provides spec sheets for listed planters, furnishings, paint colors, glazing prior to appearing before the City Commission. The applicant execute a revised contract with the City of Birmingham. And
that's been done.
That's been done. Fine. And number 3, therefore, the applicant comply with the requests of all city departments.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Boyle. Do we have a second? I'm going to give that one to Mr. Jeffries, second to Mr. Jeffries. Any conversation at the board level? Again, the motion to recommend approval of this special land use plan with the 3 conditions outlined. Seeing none, we will take that to the public. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to comment on the motion itself? Seeing none, we will bring it back to the board.
There's one. Daryl had his hand up.
I apologize, Daryl. I did not see you.
No problem.
You have a comment on the motion?
I was just saying I might suggest too that we would want to add that additional seat at the bar now, such that we're not limited later. Now would be the time, correct?
So we would add a condition 4.
That's a fair point. Mr. Boyle?
I'd like to confer with Jana, because you are allowed by our ordinance to have up to 10 seats at the bar. I don't understand why.
But the special land use is tied to a site plan, and the site plan is involved.
Right now it's 5.
So the site plan only shows 5.
Because it actually shows 5. I get
right.
that.
And so when we go around and do the inspections and the seat counts, we have to look at what was on the approved plan.
I get it. Therefore, you're suggesting that in the 2 motions, we need to add a 4th condition that states that the city approve an additional, no, that's not quite an additional, would add a seat to the bar, taking it from 5 to 6. How's that?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Jeffries, are you in support of that amendment?
If I can split the seat with Jason, sure.
All right,
Thanks,
so
Jerry.
we have a motion to approve recommend approval of the special land use with the now 4 conditions.
Yep.
Closing by midnight, providing spec sheets as indicated, executing, complying with city departments,
Yeah.
and that the applicant is allowed to add an additional bar seat if they so choose. Could we please call the roll?
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries,
Yes.
Bert Kosek,
Yes.
Daniel Scher,
Yes.
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Janelle Wolfenboyce,
Yes.
Scott Klein.
Yes. Excellent, unanimous. So, having said all that, Mr. Boyle, do you want to take a shot at the final site plan and design review as well?
Sure. The planning board recommends approval to the city commission of the applicant's request for, in this case, revised final site plan and design review to expand Lux Bistro into the storefront space to the south with the following conditions. 1, the applicant must submit official hours of operation to ensure the outdoor dining area is not open past 12 a.m. 2, the applicant provides spec sheets for the planters, outdoor furnishings, paint colors, and glazing prior to appearing before the city commission for review. Number 3, the applicant comply with the requests of all city departments. And number 4, that the applicant be allowed to add an additional seat to the bar going from 5 to 6 if they so require, desire.
Excellent. We have a motion by Mr. Boyle. Do we have a second? Mr. Williams with the second. Any conversation at the board level? One last time to the public, any conversation on the motion related to the site plan itself? Seeing no hands, we will bring it back to the board. Again, the motion is to recommend approval of the revised final site plan and design review with the conditions outlined related to time of operation, specification sheets requested the city departments, and the addition of 1 seat at the bar. Could we please call the roll?
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Janelle Wolfenboyce,
Yes.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries,
Yes.
Bert Kosek,
Yes.
Daniel Scher.
Yes.
Excellent. Motion unanimous. I would say congratulations. We're looking forward to it. Please do, however, take to heart the conversation and the comments from your neighbors. I know you do, but as you know better than I do, that your success is based on how good you are with your neighbors, and that requires communication and diligence. So please take that to heart, and can't wait for you to open.
Thanks to everybody for all the nice comments, and also the ones that we have to work on. And also, Jana, thanks for that good news regarding, call it winter dining, as we may see it. We're looking forward to it. The city's been great. I speak on behalf of my brother and sister both, but there's very few restaurants in our area, in our county, that are experiencing close to what they used to experience. And I can tell you that all of our restaurants in the North End are near that, and we're grateful for that.
Great to hear.
Great
to hear.
So thank you.
Thank you much. All right, then we will move into miscellaneous business and communications. Jana, administrative approval.
Yes, actually, Nick has one that he would like to share with you this evening. It's a request for an informal review of some changes at 420 East Frank.
Yep.
Okay.
So thanks, Jana. 420 East Frank, the Bristol. You should be very familiar with it at this point. I received a request last week for a change to the landscape plan at the Bristol. I'll share my screen. I've got everything for you here. So if everybody can see that, this is what is proposed. I wouldn't recommend squinting too hard. I'll go through most of this. I have the original approved landscape plan as well. So if you can, visualize this, you can see still plenty of street trees. There's planting areas here, all the way along the rear, in the back corner, in the front corner, all along the front. I'm gonna have to do some zooming here because those file sizes are so different. So this that I'm bringing up now was the final site plan approved landscape plan. So it's a little bit rotated, but you still get the gist. You can still see the street trees here. You can still see that there is a planting area up front and the corners along the back and on this side here. Overall, the changes aren't super dramatic. I've kind of given you a breakdown here. If you can see this Microsoft Word document, the first table is the approved plantings. You'll see
Nick, I still see the plan. I don't know if any other board members.
Okay. Let me go ahead and share my, it must not like me doing both. That?
There you go.
You got that? Yep.
Okay, so I've broken it down here. I've kind of made the tables a little larger for you. This top one was the approved final site plan. It's got evergreens, you know, some trees that include street trees and some shrubs and perennials. This bottom one is from the proposed site plan. You'll see a change, importantly, in the number of tree plantings, but they've expanded their evergreen and shrub perennial and other plantings that they're proposing on site. If you recall back when, this is from 2018, the final site plan, the landscaping standards in that zoning district and for that type of development require at least one canopy tree and one evergreen tree per unit. So this particular building has 5 units. So way back when we required 5 and 5, the canopy trees have to be at least 3-inch caliper. The evergreen plantings have to be at least 6 foot. So as you can see, they had those trees in the original site plan. On site, the canopy trees, there was 1 up here and 4 in this smaller planting area to the side.
So Nick, you're only showing us the Word document, remember?
Oh, shoot, I did it again. Okay. My bad. Let's stop the share. All right, so anyways, so here's the original final site plan again. You'll see those required trees here and along the side here, along the back here. Those made up what was required originally and they got approved. So moving to the proposed site plan here, you'll notice the tree that was over here is gone and all of the other trees that were proposed in this side planting area are gone. All that to say, in summation, if you will, they are now currently proposing 0 canopy trees for the site and only 4 evergreen plantings that meet the 6-foot height requirements, evergreen trees. So as you may be able to glean, that's going to require variance. Now, what I've been told by the applicant is that their landscape designer and their landscape professional has told them that the trees that they originally proposed will not survive where they proposed them, which was 4 here again in this area on the side and 1 over here. So that was really their driving force for changing this. Now, you know, in their favor, they have, you know, kept those spaces as landscaping. They aren't proposing any hardscapes. It's still landscaping, still a diverse selection of plantings. But nonetheless, they still do not meet the requirements in the zoning ordinance. So with the landscaping specifically, there's another point I'll have to make. What I'm looking for is if this is something that you would support, or I guess not support, I need comments because the applicant would need to seek a variance at the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I'm here looking for comments from you all on the lack of trees or any other comments that you have. The second change that I want to point out is at this top right corner here of this plan that I'm showing, they are proposing a 10-foot metal privacy fence and gates, a 20-foot opening, which they say is for fire truck access only. They've also proposed here an NDS Tough Track grass pavers, which admittedly I didn't get a second to look up, but Jen, I assume they're the cinder block looking things, that diamond shaped with grass that grows in the spaces. just for that hardscape for what they say fire trucks will need to drive over.
But Nick, they did, Mr. Secursion did call me and indicate he had talked to the fire department, and they are not requiring that fire department access, and he will be removing the gate and the pavers from the plan.
Well, all right. Well, never mind. So we'll stick to the landscaping then. I do know that Mr. Secursion is on. If you have any more of the why questions, I'm sure he'd be willing to answer. But other than that, just looking for some feedback.
And I would also like to point out that obviously they would have to switch the English ivy and the euonymus to different species. Just because they're on the prohibited species list, that's not the big issue. The big issue is loss of trees for the most part, but just to point that out.
Yeah, thanks, Jana. Thank you.
Stuart.
Nick, what's the distance between the sidewalk and the building on the west side?
Let's see. I don't have a measurement.
Well, give me a ballpark. I mean,
I would estimate 5-6 feet.
Okay. And do we count commoner varieties of trees as canopy trees or not?
Yes, we could.
Okay. Well, and some of the ones they had, like the pears, a lot of those are columnar. I don't know if those were or not. I've got a bed designed by a professional degree from Purdue. And we put a commoner sweet gum in a bed that's probably about that size. And after 10 years, it's doing great. I think there's varieties. Now, I would say, because the way, it may block somebody's window, but I find it difficult that you can plant trees in the middle of a sidewalk all throughout downtowns and you can't get a tree to grow there.
Stuart, I will say that they're required to be a 3-inch minimum caliper. I'm not sure if that affects it.
It does not, because you could have a columnar tree that's 3 inches in diameter that would still meet the requirement.
Well, maybe before I go to Mr. Scher, Nick, Jana, this is not a swap out of a couple of species. This is a brand new landscape plan. And I'm not approving a brand new landscape plan administratively, particularly on a site that I've already approved administratively how many times? I'm going to rant a little. I'm tired, quite frankly, of the developers in this town in general showing us what we want to get approval and then coming back 2, 3, 4 times to switch out whatever the heck they think they want. And I understand materials may not be available, fine, but I'm done with it. And there's no way I'm supporting an administrative approval of this. And the only way I'd even support a revision to their site plan is a full review of the site plan, along with full comments from our arborist and anybody else that reviews our landscape plans.
I agree.
Mr. Scher, you had your hand up first.
Okay, thank you. I agree. I don't think administrative approval is appropriate, in part because at least one of the neighbors, as I recall, had made comments on the landscape plan. And that's something that we would want to be sure that they had a chance to look at. But the board should be aware of the fact that pear trees are now subject to some rust disease that's incurable. They're dying all over town. We're going to see them die off. So I can appreciate the fact that they want to avoid them. And rather than saying they wouldn't survive in that spot, it may be that the landscape architect saying that they're not a species that's going to survive. That said, I'm not sure why we would have a reduction in trees, because there are other ways to do it.
Mr. Kozak, you had your hand up.
To say that, I recognize that things may change over time. I'm not an expert in landscape material, so I can't judge the previously approved plan versus the one that's being proposed here. I would want to hear from a landscape architect specifically to speak to what was proposed, why it's being changed, and hopefully it's for the better. I mean, just graphically, what was proposed before, I mean, it looks like there's a lot of stuff packed in there, and it doesn't necessarily mean it was perfect before, but you know, so I would need to hear not just from an owner or a developer, but somebody who's an expert. And as the chairman said, you know, have the opinion from our arborist or someone who's our expert who can support that information or not.
Any other opinions of the board for Nick? Nick, pretty clear? Thank you. Any other communications or administrative approvals, Jana, to talk about?
Not to talk about, but you can see there were several in the packet for you to look through.
Any questions on those? Not sure there's anything to discuss with that. Draft agenda for September 9th. Yikes.
I know it's already September. Well, we'll have our master plan discussion. The next topic will be mixed use districts, specifically focused on Market North and Maple and Woodward. So we'll have that discussion. And I will also be talking to you, Mr. Klein, to see if we can have a little discussion about something else at the end of that with regards to the City Commission has asked us to come up with the Bate Street project. And so I'd like to, it's a very broad framework that they're looking at, and I'd like to potentially run that by the planning board at the end of that meeting before it goes to the commission.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. It cut out.
You cut out. You did, Janet. You said the commission wants us to, and then kind of froze.
The commission has asked the city staff to draft up a framework plan for considering moving forward with something for the Bate Street project. And so they've asked us to come up with a broad plan of what we would do, when we would do it, who would be involved, do we hire a consultant, do we not hire a consultant, this kind of thing. And so I would like to bring sort of a draft of that framework to the planning board to get your input before it goes to the city commission in September.
Thank you.
Okay. I will keep my comments to myself. And is there any other business tonight?
For now, your comment.
Yes, I will keep it to myself for now.
It won't last long.
It will not. It will not. But seeing no other business and knowing that my appropriate time to exit stage left, I will adjourn this meeting.
You should be a stand-up comedian.
And thank you all for joining. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Night.